Thank you very much. One of the things I wanted to maybe explain a little bit is how I got started with the book. So, as you heard earlier, I was the CIO of NASA and I retired April 3rd. On April 4th, I started my own company, April 4th at midnight, actually, when I was officially not a government employee. And one of the reasons why I did that is because I talked to the Ethics Council at NASA and wanted to make sure that I dotted my I's and crossed my T's and did all the things the right way. And as I decided to write a book while I was still officially a government executive, I obviously went to the Ethics Council and said, hey, so what do I do and what do I not do? And after about a half an hour of listening to him, tried to almost beat it out of me. He told me I couldn't, well, I had a CIO blog, the NASA CIO blog, which was a very successful blog, and I wrote about leadership, technology, innovation, and about being a CIO at NASA. And so I wanted to write a book about that. And after a half an hour of listening to him, he beat it out of me. And the only thing left was about leadership. So I didn't have much content, and I had to develop content for the book. And in order to help me do that, I got a developmental editor and who gave me writing assignments. Write about this, and then I'd go off and write about that, write about that. And one of the first writing assignments I got was to write about superpowers that I have. And I said, what a silly assignment. And I'm thinking, this isn't going to get me any closer to a book on leadership. Why am I even doing this? So I just got over it, kind of poured myself a glass of wine, and just did just free writing. And I wrote about my superpowers, and I just let it go. And as I thought about my superhero powers, I thought about one of the TV shows that I really liked, which was Heroes. And Heroes was about regular people who started to discover that they had these powers, and their lives were changed, and then they were called to do these things that they just didn't know they should do or even wanted to do. And so one of the taglines in the TV show was save the cheerleader, save the world. So here, a cheerleader, a teenager, had the ability, and she did, as we look at the first season and find out at the end that she did save the world, she had the ability to save the world. And you do too. Because we all have superhero powers. We just have to discover what they are. Today's leadership, which is what Next Gen is all about, what is the next generation going to do, and what is that leadership challenge? It's huge, and it requires a new kind of leadership. And that leadership is found by unmasking the superhero in all of us. So how do you take the ordinary and make it extraordinary? How do you unmask this superhero hidden behind everybody? And so let's talk a little bit about today's challenges and why this is important. Well, first, everything is fragile. When you look at the complexity of change and how difficult that is, the pace and the complexity just keeps getting bigger, and it gets bigger exponentially. The impact of things that happen are huge. For example, when we use social media, one of the amazing technologies that's now all the rage, a whisper in a bedroom becomes a shout in cyberspace. One little tweet of a picture, and then all of a sudden, your career has changed, as we see now. The fragile nature of our environment is significant when we look at the earthquake in Japan and look at the global impact that it had. We think about, oh, that's Japan. It affected the entire world. We look at the economy. So what? There's something going on with the euro over across the pond. That affects us. The fragility of politics. In a minute, you can have a military coup, and then a country belongs to somebody else overnight. The next kind of thing that we see is that everything is unknown. We think, oh well, we heard earlier about getting a man to the moon, and now about getting a man to Mars. And I feel very fortunate and blessed by having ended my federal career at NASA. What better cool place can you work for? I mean, I was lucky and blessed and very fortunate. And one of the things that NASA does is help mankind, not just the United States of America or not just NASA, but all of mankind globally, answer fundamental questions that we all have. And those questions are, where did we come from? Where are we going? And are we alone out there? We all want to know. And we all have this drive in us, that hidden hero, no doubt, to go out and find the answers to these questions. And so today's explorers right now, they're picking out backpacks. They're trying to figure out what the new lunchbox should be. They're in elementary school, or perhaps they're in daycare. One of the recent things that we hear relative to NASA are people are volunteering to make a one-way trip to Mars, because the technical difficulties associated with getting to Mars is that fuel weighs so much. So you've got to take enough fuel to get there and come back and survive with the elements out in deep space. And people are willing to volunteer to go out there and walk on the planet just because it's there. They're heroes among us. So what if you could save lives? And what if you had superhero powers that you could heal people? Or what if you could make amazing discoveries like many of the NASA scientists do? Well, then you'd be a superhero. So what is a hero? We think about these heroes as being these amazing people that aren't us. They're somebody else. But a hero is an ordinary person, just like me, just like you. And the ordinary person with certain traits. They're strong, they're good, they're passionate, and they love what they're doing. So let's talk about some real and fictional heroes. You had the little teeny Mother Teresa. She was very, very small, but huge in terms of the impact that she made to society and to lives everywhere. She decided that she was going to solve world hunger. This little teeny lady decides that she's going to take on this thing that hardly anybody can tackle. And her ministry had such impact in saving lives and feeding the poor and addressing the people whose society often turns around. She had strength like Superman. She could withstand bullets. She could see into the future. She had X-ray vision. She was a superhuman woman. We had principles of justice, and those are the characteristics that we see in Martin Luther King. He gave his life for justice. He gave his life because he believed that society could be a better place. That society could be a better place if we all loved each other and looked at the societal problems and racism from a very peaceful perspective. He wanted to see justice for all. He was not too much unlike Batman. Though Batman was a fictional character, Batman had a tremendous negative childhood. And he saw the impact of lack of justice, and he wanted to do something and do something better for society. He was fictional. Martin Luther King was real, and we're real also. And there are superhuman traits in us that are very similar to Batman and very similar to Martin Luther King. And then finally, one of the traits of a superhero is passion. They do things just because they have to, and they don't know why. One such person was Joan of Arc. She died young, but as a 13-year-old girl, she heard a voice come to her head and say, "Go save France." And as a 13-year-old girl, she went out and led armies of men to go out and do what men would be afraid of doing, and saved her country. She died as a result of doing it, but she did it because she had to, and she believed in it. So the fictional hero that we see beside her is Hancock. And in the movie Hancock, I don't know if you saw it, but this is a superhero that loses his memory. He doesn't remember why he did the things that he did. He doesn't remember who he was or where these goofy powers came from. But deep inside, he has to do these things. And he does the things that he has to do. If you're a hero, you do the things that you have to do, and you do it because you must, and you do it even if you go to a planet and don't come back, even if you lose your life, because it's that passion that causes the superhero to be as great as she can be. And so we've heard about some of the fictional characters, and we've heard about some of the larger-than-life characters in terms of Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, and Joan of Arc. But what about regular folk? What about regular folk like you or me? How do we do to turn our ordinary lives into extraordinary leadership? And how do we translate what we have learned or what we can learn from these historical or fictional characters or these icons and turn that into extraordinary leadership? So let's talk about it a little bit more specifically. So what are some of those characteristics? Well, what if you could read minds? That would be a pretty cool leadership trait, wouldn't it? What if you had superhuman strength, if you could lift something, heavier, much, much heavier than yourself? Or what if you could walk through fire? Those are amazing traits that sound like that's something that the normal person couldn't do, right? Well, let's talk about that. Here are the tennis twins, Mike and Bob Ryan, and they were just unbeatable when it came to doubles. And one of the things that they said during an interview about why they were so successful, they were able to do, one twin would seem to be in the right spot that the other twin would hit the ball. And they said that they used intuition in order to anticipate what the other twin was going to do. And they translated that intuition to action. That action turned into success, and that success turned into championships that they both shared as a result of using their mind reading. So let's talk about superhuman women. Right or wrong, a lot of people say, okay, women aren't very strong, not very strong physically. But we hear stories about the mother that saves her child by prying open the jaws of a polar bear or a dog or a bear to get her child out of danger and save their life. And so here's a story about women who lifted a car off of a young boy to save their life. Now, there's a lot of criticism about stories like this, saying, well, it's anecdotal. You don't really know that there's anything to this. Well, you can't necessarily have scientific experiments to demonstrate how this works. But the thing that it has in common that I want to point out is that a lot of these stories are about women. And a lot of these stories about women saving the life of their child. And what happens there is that all at once you've got fear, all at once you've got love, and all at once you don't think about whether or not what your limitations are. The mother is able to take that fear, translate it into the adrenaline, to all those physical things that need to happen, and they develop the superhuman strength that they need to do what they need to do. There's something to fear, and there's something to passion, and there's something to love that you can put together to do superhuman things. And who can walk through fire and survive? Well, this guy did. He walked through fire 7 times, in fact, to save his friends. What happened here is that their vehicle was bombed, and he was drenched with diesel fuel, and the vehicle was on fire. He had to go in there and save his friends. So as he went through the fire, his uniform caught on fire, but he was able to go in and rescue his friends, not just once, but 7 times. And he died because of his injuries, but his friends lived because of his superhuman ability to do that. A lot of times scientists are looking at that and they see, for example, PCP users who have this unfathomable ability to endure pain and have a reaction that they might have superhuman strength in order to do some of the things that they do. So scientists are studying why this happens and how it happens. And this young soldier, he took his unfathomable strength to walk through fire and have the courage to keep doing that over and over and over again. And so I talked about fear a couple of times because many of you are going to be afraid. We heard a lot of good information in the previous speaker, a charge for you to go out and do things, a charge for you to go out and do some of these things and make this country #1 in technology and leadership, as we should be, and as our forefathers visioned. And so you might be afraid to do that. But fear, if used correctly, gives us courage. And so fear is a good thing. Fear gives you that adrenaline. Fear can be turned to passion. Fear can be turned into that courage and things that you need. So use fear in order to get maybe a little divine madness to give us the things that we need to do. We also use truth. We use integrity. It's a gift. A quick story that I'll say, because I'm running out of time, is when I was at ATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Something happened, and I was about to get in trouble, and I didn't know what to do. And I was called into the office of the assistant deputy director, and he had this goofy habit of whistling Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer when he was about to just really demolish somebody. So I had to go and talk to him to hear what he was going to say, and he wasn't there. And he left a message for me to go get him. And I just had this flashback of, being a young girl in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. has weeping willow trees. Weeping willow trees make horrible switches when you're in trouble. And my mother used to say, go out and get a switch. And you had to go get your own switch. And so now I had to go and see this guy and hear Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer coming all the way down the hall. And I didn't know what to say, because I knew my butt was getting ready to get shellacked. So I said a little prayer about what to do, and I decided to tell the truth, to tell him what happened. And he flicked off, and he turned our organization into internal affairs for an investigation where the truth did come out. And later I had a very, very frank conversation with him, and he said, and I said to him, I was damned if I didn't and damned if I did, but I decided to tell the truth and be damned. And I would say the same thing to you. Tell the truth, and no matter what happens, you will be good in the end. Know yourself, know who you are, know why you're doing what you want to do. When I was in college, I went to Howard University. I took Latin as a minor, and my Latin professor told us the story of Dido and Aeneas. Dido, queen of Carthage, and she was just beautiful and loved what she was doing. And Aeneas, a young Trojan warrior, and they fell in love. But he said, oh, he's got his duty. He's got to go back and find Rome. And she said, you scumbag, I'll teach you. And she killed herself and threw herself on the funeral pyre so he could see it. Right? But the difference between the two of them was amazing. And I remember telling my professor, I don't ever want to love anybody the way she loved him. Not ever. Not ever. But the thing that was instructed was about Aeneas. Aeneas never forgot what he was supposed to be doing. But Dido did. She forgot. When she saw this handsome warrior, she said, whoa. She forgot, and she died. He didn't forget, and he founded Rome. So being a hero is tough. And then as we think about being a leader in government, maybe the statistics are against us. So a couple little factoids from the Partnership of Public Service. Federal workers are not appropriately paid, rewarded, or recognized. Leadership in the government is not as good as it needs to be, and federal workers aren't as empowered as they need to be. So what do we need? We need heroes like you. And this is why. 1 out of 4 of the Nobel Prize winners are federal employees, federal people changing the world. One of the things that Michelle Obama said, that the federal workers are invisible. We're hiding. We're not getting recognition, but we're doing the things that we need to do. And then finally, when talking about the first responders who reacted to the Boston bomber and saved lives immediately, these people just clapped in recognition for what they did. Who's going to clap for you? Who? So one last thing about a mask, because one of the things that all superheroes seem to have is a mask. And they're hiding behind their mask. They're hiding some of the traits that we talked about in a leader. They're hiding some of those things about courage and passion and faith and all the things that we think about when we think about a leader. What is your mask? And what are you hiding behind your mask? And considering the mask of a fireman, the first responder, he's hiding the ability to be prepared, to step into action and save lives quickly. Look at the mask of a doctor, and hiding behind that mask, the ability to save lives, to heal, to launch into action when he needs to. And then finally, look at the mask of the astronaut, willing to risk his life to answer the fundamental questions that we all have as humans, to walk on a planet or a heavenly body that no one's dared walk on and come back. Unmask the superhero in you. Look behind your mask. It's not too far that you have to go to find out what that is. Look in the mirror and be the superhero that this government needs. Thank you very much.